Do the three hardest. Anybody familiar with the phrase, the Magenta Principles, will no doubt be familiar with the example of the maths lesson in which the teacher gave the students 20 questions, 20 problems, 20 sums, and invited them to do the three hardest. Simple idea, but a deceptively simple idea, because it led to some fantastic learning. It was an absolutely brilliant lesson. Now, it's an example that actually captures so many of the characteristic features of the Magenta approach. To start with, it's a simple tweak. 20 sums, do them, becomes 20 sums, do the three hardest. Did not take the teacher 4 hours the night before to prepare that. Take a lesson, take an activity, tweak it, or as some would have it, Magentify it. Now, on this particular occasion, what was a seemingly simple tweak was actually a very significant tweak, because it really got them thinking and it really got them talking. And thinking and talking lie at the very heart of the Magenta principles. More than that though, the way in which they engage with the activity gives the teacher a really good insight into what's going on in there, and provides enormous opportunities for probing and developing and deepening children's thinking through questioning. So, for example, I notice you've all gone for 19. Why? What makes 19 harder than the rest? And do you have to do 19 in a different way than the others because it's harder? And then one of my favourite questions, and I have to say one of the best questions if you want to get an insight into what's going on in there, is how could you have made the other questions as hard as 19? Or effectively, how could you have made the easy questions harder? Take a look at these examples. The first comes from a modern languages lesson, and it's a two-part lesson. Part one involves, can you place the most complex statements close to the middle of the target and the least complex statements to the periphery? Part two involved, how could you get the statements on the outside closer to the middle? Now, of course, that's a variation on how could you have made the easier questions harder? This example comes from a maths lesson and simply involves, can you place the hardest questions towards the middle of the target and the easier questions to the outside? Part two was, how could you get the easier questions on the outside closer to the middle? Or how could you make the easier questions harder? Now, there's a really good example of how you develop Magenta. The teacher would say, well, I remember the example of do the three hardest. I remember the example of the languages lesson using the target. And all I did, quite simply, would put the two together. That's how you develop a Magenta approach. You begin by taking an idea and trying it out, adopting it. But then you move on. You take 2 or 3 ideas and you combine them, you develop them, you adapt them, you customize them, you make them work for you in your classroom and your context. Now, do the three hardest, or which one is the hardest, is a particularly effective strategy, simple tweak, but a very effective tweak, because it's going to give you a really good insight into what's going on in there. But more than that, and one of the reasons I like it so much, is because it's so flexible. You could use that in a planned way. 10 questions, 20 questions, ask them to do the three hardest, or which is the hardest. But you could use it in a completely impromptu manner. The next time you're in a classroom and a child puts their hand up and says, excuse me, I've finished. You have a choice. You can either say, well done, or you can simply say, so which was the hardest? Why was that the hardest? Did you have to do it in a different way? Because it was harder than the others. And then you could say, I'll be back in 2 minutes. You're going to tell me, how could you have made the other questions as hard as that one? So, do the three hardest. Go play with it. Have fun.